Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my November wrap up. Technically I only finished 2 books in November, but I've been reading a lot of books and I just haven't finished any of them yet. So the first book I finished in November was An Impossible Love by Christine Angot, and this is translated from French by Armine Cotin-Mortimer. This is it's deemed autofiction, which differs slightly from autobiography in the fact that it's the author's fictionalized sort of autobiography. I don't really know how the difference between autofiction but it's a bit of a strange thing. So you like fictionalize the truth of your life. But anyway, this book is a sequel but a prequel to her more famous and shocking book entitled a particular word that I'm not going to show on the camera because I don't know whether it will like show up and then ban it. Like, I know it does that on TikTok and things like that. I don't know how similar TikTok and YouTube are in that respect, but I don't want to get censored basically because I'm talking about something. But yeah, this novel, autofiction novel, caused a massive sensation in France when it was published because of the material. And so then An Impossible Love goes before that book to the meeting of Christine Angot's parents and the sort of very, very volatile relationship that her mother had with her father, and basically how much of a bastard he was and how he just mistreated the women in his life because he thought he was better than them, because he was of a higher social status. So he basically treated Christine Angot's mother, Rachel, like she was basically less than human, like a subordinate species to himself. And she put up with it, and it's a very heavy read. It's very simply written. Obviously this is a translation, but I'm sure that would translate over. So it's a very simple narrative told by Christine Angot. She is the narrator looking back at the life of her parents. And then it does come to light the abuse that Christine undergoes from her father, which forms the basis of the first book that was published, which I have started reading, but it is Stream of Consciousness, which I find very, very hard to get on board with because it's just a very, I don't know, like you just don't know what you're reading of the time because there's just thoughts flowing everywhere. So you have to really focus, and I just haven't been in the right sort of reading mood to literally focus so hard so that I can unravel the enigma of Angot's writing in this book. But yeah, I can't say I enjoyed this because it's fucking heavy. And when things, like, I kind of knew where it was going to go because I'd heard about this book. So obviously I knew that was going to be a consequence of this man's abuse. And when it happened, you just kind of think, oh my God, what a demented human to just dehumanize someone and then also use it as a tool to basically to divide these 2 women that had a beautiful bond. He then abuses the daughter, which then makes her hate her mother, and it's just sickening. But it is an important read, I think, because like shit like this happens, and it's very hard to read some of it. And like I said, this is really hard. The subject matter hasn't actually like sort of been revealed yet. Obviously, you know what the book is called, but the stream of consciousness makes it so hard to get into. The second book I finished, so I started reading this and finished it in the month of November, is Upstream by Mary Oliver, and it is a book of selected essays. And wow, can I just say this was utterly beautiful to read. Mary Oliver has a spellbinding way with language and how she incorporates the feeling of being amongst nature into her words, and just talking about the power of being around trees and wildlife. And even like one of the essays is about a spider in the corner of her cellar or something, but the way she writes it is just so magnetic, and I felt myself like, oh wow, I really don't like spiders because they scare me, and it's been something that's haunted me since my youth. I don't know whether it was like watching Spider-Man too young or watching Lord of the Rings and seeing Shelob attack the hobbits. But I don't know, something since childhood has made me... It's kind of a natural thing though, like a lot of people are scared of spiders, but I'm literally petrified. Like sometimes if I've seen a spider in my room at night, I can't go to sleep. I will literally be up all night trying to find it to get rid of it, trying to grab it with my spider grabber and launch it out the window. But yeah, so this, it's just beautiful. It feels very much like you're just talking to a friend, and it feels very much autumnal as well. I mean, I don't know whether it's the front cover that just leans to an early autumn wander through the forest, but it almost reminded me of Tove Jansson's The Summer Book, in the fact that it's an older woman sort of out in nature and sort of being humbled by it and very much in the moment. And so it felt like sort of the other side of that book, because obviously that is set in summer and it's about an elderly woman looking after her grandchild and exploring the beautiful archipelagos off of Finland. Whereas this is like Americana, sort of exploring the dense forest of where Mary Oliver used to live. So yeah, it just felt of the same ilk, and it feels like I'm going to return to this maybe annually at this time of year to sort of just ground myself in being present and being in awe of nature and just your place in the world and poetry and things like that. Because there's quite a few essays in here about poets like Wordsworth, Poe and Walt Whitman. Is it Walt Whitman? Yeah, Walt Whitman. But yeah, beautiful. I really recommend this if you... I don't know, if you just want something peaceful and heartwarming to read and thought-provoking and you like nature. And like I predicted, I feel like this is my Walden. She does actually make a mention of Thoreau's Walden, but I just found that text so dry and dull when I had to study it for uni, but this feels like it closer to my heart, so I'm happy about that. And then finally, the book I have been reading kind of literally towards the very end of November, and obviously we're now into December and I've been reading it a bit, is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I don't know why I haven't picked up a Sanderson, I don't know, like ever, but recently I was just like, I need something just easygoing, entertaining and fantasy, and this just fit the bill because it just very much feels like blockbuster fiction. Like, I think the Cosmere, you could just say it's like the MCU but in book form, because it just very much feels like the interconnectedness, crowd pleasing storylines. Because I don't want to say this necessarily, but it's not like spellbindingly written. It's very much matter of fact and it's all in the story. It's not necessarily about setting the setting. Like with Lord of the Rings, you get these magnificent, very long-winded descriptions of places that very much bring you into Middle-earth. Whereas this is very much like, they're here, they're doing this, action, 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 retrospection on character and things like that. And a few times I found myself accidentally staying up until like 2 a.m. reading, so it's very much like an entertaining, I want to read more and more and more. Currently I'm only 256 pages in, so I've still got a while, but I did actually recently get the next, like the other 2 books in the trilogy, because I was like, I need to be able to just finish this, like literally just go from one to the next one. But I'm trying to like pace myself and make sure I don't start reading too late at night, because then I'll stay up and not sleep properly. But yeah, it's very entertaining and the characters are funny. Like, I mean, Kelsier is obviously really cool and your charismatic hero. Another character I think's funny is Breeze, because of like his wine drinking, and I'm a bit of a wine aficionado, so I would probably be like if there was going to be in a team, I'd be the wine drinking twat of the team. And like Vin's quite sweet, and obviously as she's a young woman, she is like the audience surrogate. So she's learning all this information as we're learning the information, so that makes it very accessible for readers because of how Sanderson has put her in. It's a bit like in Inception, Ariadne is the audience surrogate for a very intricate story, so then you can learn as she learns. So yeah, that's great. I really enjoy it, and I think it's Well worth a read if you love not sci-fi, fantasy. Talking of sci-fi, I also have started reading Neuromancer, but I'm only like 50 pages into it and I probably need to pause it while I'm reading my other books. But yeah, that's interesting. But the main reason why I started reading Neuromancer is because I've been watching The Peripheral with Chloe Grace Moretz in it, and a few other people, but most importantly Tania Miller, who I don't know if people know who she is, but she's fucking cool. She was in Years and Years, The Haunting of Bly Manor, the Foundation series on Apple. I think she's just so cool, and in this she plays a villain to utter perfection. Like, she's so devilishly stylish and just really intriguing. So I think she's so cool. She was actually one of the main reasons why I started watching the series, because I was looking through the cast. I was like, oh yeah, I know who Chloe Grace Moretz is, but I'm not really like a fan, I would say. And I saw that Tania Miller was in it. I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And then I read the synopsis and I was like, hold on, this is so my thing. And it's by William Gibson, who wrote Neuromancer. So yeah, the series is very, very interesting. It's also created by the creators of Westworld, which has been cancelled, which is a bit unfortunate, but it did feel like the story wrapped up, so it's not such a bad thing. But they've brought this series to life and it's so entertaining and enthralling and really interesting about like alternate realities, simulation, future worlds interacting with past worlds, sort of multiverse vibes. Yeah, it's a very stylish and cool sci-fi thriller, and yeah, I'm really enjoying the character development. Like, is it Wilfred? Fascinating character, very complex, very interesting. And yeah, like I'm really, really enjoying it. I thought it was going to be a bit cheesy, and I was like, oh, is it going to be one of those sci-fi TV shows that have a really good premise, but it just doesn't get executed well? And I was so pleasantly surprised. I'm loving it. I think there's one more episode that aired on Friday, couple of days ago, so I'm going to watch that tonight. So good. Really, really enjoying it. What else have I watched? Oh yes, 1899. Created by the masterminds behind the German TV series Dark. This is just as twisty. It may not be as like operatic and sort of Shakespearean in its very like familial tragedy vibes, but there's still like familial tragedy in this, but it kind of incorporates some of their themes into a whole new package, and by the end, when the last half an hour happens, you're like, what? No way. But I just loved how this show was packaged, first as a sort of historical horror, and then slowly science fiction elements weave its way in. Then you've also got I've forgotten his name, the mysterious guy who wanders around and is like, oh, that reminds me of the stranger from Dark, who was played by the same guy as the captain. But yeah, I love Emily Beecham. I think she's amazing. Like, there's a film that I watched called Little Joe a few years ago, and she's absolutely fantastic in that. She was also in this really cool martial arts series called, what was it called? I've forgotten the show. It had Daniel Wu in it, and it was like about this feudalistic society in the future. What was it called? Into the Badlands. That was really cool. Yeah, so she's really great, and she really carries the emotional turmoil of this series. It's so mysterious, so intricate, which is what they demonstrated in Dark. Hints slowly come to the forefront. Like, the triangles are everywhere, and you have to focus to find these symbols. You're like, oh my god, in her earrings, on the back of the kimono, on the carpet, everywhere. And then like the glitch in the Matrix where they all drink their drinks at the same time. And it's just like, what? And then, yeah, just, loved it. And I love how it's also wrapped up in like family and sort of generational trauma and things like that. And then the final moment, you're like, hang on a minute, this is something else entirely. Where do we go from here to find out what this actually means? And then they can't cancel it. Like, if Netflix cancel this show, which they won't, because you can't, it is a masterpiece, or very near to being a masterpiece, but we need to go a step further. We need the second chapter. But I think the creators have said that it's like they've planned it out as a 3-series show, just like they did with Dark. So I feel like we need these chapters, like, just complete it, please. Another thing that really makes this show stand out is how it was made. So they used that technology that has been sort of showcased in The Mandalorian, where it's like the actors are on a backdrop essentially that is digitally produced. And what this means for the show is it adds another layer to the whole idea of it being, I'm going to spoil this, so jump forward to the time I put on the screen if you don't want to know what essentially the series is mainly about. So from now, skip to... So essentially it feeds into the idea of it being a simulation because of the pristine digital effects. Feel almost a bit fake because it can't be absolutely real, although it does bloody feel real. The idea of them being on this digital backdrop very much feeds into the artificial simulation theme, which I just think's beautiful. And it feels like I'm deconstructing a novel because of how you can pick apart the form of it and how it was created to then feed into the themes of the show. It's so good. If you haven't watched it yet, definitely give it a chance. It is sublime. Other TV shows, have I really been watching anything else? No, but I probably might check out Wednesday. Like, people, when I used to work in retail, people used to call me Wednesday because I'm a bit weird. Yeah, and like, so, I mean, they kind of used to tease me about it, so it was like almost an insult as much of a nickname, and like they would just go around clicking like that at me. But yeah, she's cool now, so who cares? But yeah, so I might watch that. Other thing I've been watching, it's like a rewatch for me, but there's this Amazon comedy from quite a few years ago called Mozart in the Jungle, and I just love it so much. Like, it's just a little warm, cozy hug. It's about a orchestra, like the New York Symphony. Their conductor is replaced with this guy called Rodrigo, who's played by Gael Garcia Bernal. And he comes in and revolutionises the orchestra because he's an eccentric guy, very modern and not like sort of stuffy like you would expect like an orchestra to be. So he takes over and helps them explore a different culture through the fact that he's Mexican and that he grew up in a totally different world to some of these people, and he sort of changes their minds about things, gets them to be more free. Like, he's very passionate about cutting the red tape and playing with the blood, so playing passionately, and it's not about perfection, it's about really feeling the music. And it's just so beautiful. And it's also got Lola Kirk in it, who's really just charismatic as a very young she's aspiring to be an oboe player on the orchestra, and she gets involved, and it's just a really magical story about music and how it moves people and how we all share universal things. We just need to be a bit kinder to each other and explore the magic of life. So that's been quite nice rewatching that. On to movies. I'm not going to talk for much longer because I am losing my voice, and I was going to record another video today, which is like a book haul, but it's like the last book haul for a long time because I'm going to try not to buy books because I can't afford to. But yeah, let's quickly look at movies. So the first movie I watched in December, The Banshees of Inisherin. I was actually quite disappointed with this film. I found it a bit boring, if I'm perfectly honest. Like, the best bits were shown in the trailer, and I thought it was going to go darker. Maybe that's me. Like, it's all about this guy who decides that he doesn't want to be friends with someone and then threatens he's going to chop his fingers off, so that's quite dark. But yeah, like, it was kind of amusing. It's like a tragicomedy. And the performances were good, like the setting was good, but I don't know, I just expected a bit more. So I was slightly disappointed with that. The Triangle of Sadness by Ruben Östlund, who I think is a genius filmmaker. Like, he is so great at satires. Like, if you've seen Force Majeure, which is a satire on toxic masculinity and selfishness and like a man's place in a family and what is expected of him and things like that. Then you've got The Square, which is about like an artist and a critique, not an artist, about a museum curator, and is very much a critique of the absurdity of the art world. Hilarious. And then Triangle of Sadness, a very funny criticism and satire on the uber wealthy and sort of the model / influencer industry. And yeah, it's really hilarious. And when I heard that people had been sick at Cannes, like literally vomiting. I was like, oh, here we go again, dramatic. But there's a scene where they're all on the boat, because half of it takes place on a boat, where everyone starts vomiting, and someone starts vomiting and shitting at the same time. And I nearly threw up. Like, I did gag a few times. It's like, okay, I can understand this. Normally when people say they were sick at Cannes or that there was mass walkout, it's just for drama. But this, I can actually understand why people might have vomited, because it was particularly vile in places. But it was really funny, and it sort of critiques about, in the society that we are, the rich and the wealthy and the powerful are seen as better, and they're put on a pedestal to a certain degree. But the tables turn when they get shipwrecked, and the overlooked cleaner, for example, becomes the most powerful person out of everyone because she knows how to do things. She knows how to catch fish, she knows how to forage, she knows all these different skills, and she can then lead them, and then she uses that to her advantage to become the powerful one. And like, these rich people are then suddenly made to feel like worthless because they don't know how to do anything. And it's very interesting how it happens. And then there's like an open-ended ending that makes you think, oh, did this happen or did this happen? But yeah, it's really, really quite hilarious. And like, there's also like Marxist versus capitalist sort of moments with the ship captain and like this magnate sort of talking. It's very interesting and funny. What else did I watch? Johnny Mnemonic with a very cute Keanu Reeves back in the 90s. The film is utter trash though. Like, it's so 90s it hurts. But it was kind of enjoyable, but very cheesy. Very, very cheesy. But again, that was based on a William Gibson short story. So I had a bit of a William Gibson moment in November, mainly because of The Peripheral, and I was just like, oh wow, I'll watch a movie and I'll start reading a book so I can be like, in each medium, something to do with William Gibson. I don't know why my brain does that sometimes. Like, I just decide to then become obsessed with something and then watch and consume it. Then I watched Stalker by Andrei Tarkovsky. My first foray into the Soviet filmmaker's filmography. This was a tricky one. While I was watching it, I was very aware of time passing because it's very slow. It's very much a glacial pace. But the cinematography is stunning, the colour palette is stunning, and there's very, very interesting discourse about desire and figuring out what you want, but sort of realising that maybe what you want isn't actually what you want. So the basis of the story is that there's this zone in Russia somewhere after a meteorite hits, and it's cornered off and people can go into it, but illegally. And there's this guy who is a stalker, and he takes these two men into the zone because there's a legend about a room that can grant you your deepest desire. So these men go into this zone to find the room, to then ask for what they want and to receive it. But it doesn't necessarily work like that, because over the time of their journey into this very deadly, mysterious zone, they start to consider, oh, maybe we don't really want to do this. Maybe it's too powerful. Maybe this shouldn't exist. And the very philosophical dilemma of it, which I thought was fascinating. And like, it stayed with me since I've watched it, and I feel like I need to rewatch it again, which is very strange because I found it quite hard to watch. But that's the power of movies like this, is they're not necessarily completely enjoyable moments as you're watching them, but they leave you feeling something. And that's really powerful, I think, when you consider them long after the closing credits. But yeah, the film is actually based on a book by two Soviet authors, which I do have, which will be featured in the book haul I'm doing. They also wrote the screenplay for it. What are their names? Boris Strugovsky and Arkady Strugovsky or something like that. I will put their names at the bottom because I'm terrible at pronunciation. And I did look up their names before I started this video, but because it's one of the last things I'm talking about, I've completely forgotten. But yeah, so I'm really excited to read the book that the film is based on, which is Roadside Picnic, to delve into where they changed it, because the fact that they wrote the book and then they also wrote the screenplay, I find that really interesting because they've changed it for a different medium, and I want to discover the original source. So I'll probably be reading that quite soon. What other movies did I watch? Oh yeah, I'm going to talk about 2 movies that I watched in December because I won't remember them by the time my next video comes out. And I did want to watch them in November, I just didn't have enough time to watch them. But this one was the last one I watched in November, which is The Menu, which very much feels like a companion piece to Triangle of Sadness, because it is a satire and it's very much about the wealthy, the powerful, and you could also see The Menu as a metaphor for movies. So the idea of a chef creating this food very much feels like the director directing a movie, and you've got like the pretentious people that pick it all apart. I am one of those people, but wouldn't know how to craft the thing themselves. You've got like the investors, the dodgy finance bros. You've got the critics who sort of slaughter the filmmakers / the food maker. The food maker, the chef, and could like destroy a restaurant through their opinion. Yeah, like just the film could be seen as a metaphor, but essentially it's about a group of people that come to an offshore island to a very premium upper class restaurant for a culinary experience. Little do they know they're going to be annihilated. It's very entertaining, very funny. The actors in it are sensational, like Hong Chow, Ralph Fiennes, Anya Taylor-Joy, Nicholas Hoult, and sort of everyone else on the cast play their roles to perfection. But I very much enjoyed the performances the most from the people I named. It's severely unhinged, the movie, but very like precise and very clean cut, very much like The Chef. Then I watched Bones and All by Luca Guadagnino, the guy that did Call Me By Your Name. And it's a story about cannibals, which we all know that I'm mildly interested in. I don't know what it is, but I think it's because it's something that people shouldn't do, that you're just almost intrigued by it. So yeah, like the film is very beautiful. Like it's very much a coming of age story about a young woman, and she's sort of figuring out how to exist as a cannibal. Like it's framed in the story that it's not necessarily the cannibal's fault, they just have to eat human flesh. But it's very endearing but creepy, and almost feels like a horror story in moments and a romance in others. But yeah, the main leads in Taylor Russell and Timothée Chalamet are brilliant. The cinematography is very nice, quite beautiful. It's very much like an ode to the Great American Road Trip, and yeah, it's set in the 80s as well, which you can feel through the costume design and just the vibe of the film. It's really good. Finally got to see Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, because like, I'm still very much trying to avoid the big corona because, like, I haven't caught it yet. So I don't actually go to the cinema when films come out directly. So I had to wait a couple of weeks for the cinema showings to sort of quieten down a bit so I could go and see it. But oh my god, it was so good. I was starting to feel a bit like, earlier this year I was like, superhero films, they're all just feeling very generic at the moment. Like I was really kind of like bored by Doctor Strange, and like I haven't necessarily kept up with all of the Disney Plus series either. But then Black Panther came and just blew me away. It's such a beautiful tribute to Chadwick Boseman. And again, Black Panther is not just a superhero film. It's a celebration of culture and identity, and the costume designs in this film, the music, just everything sang on screen. Like it was so beautifully realised. And I am so intrigued by Namor and his underwater kingdom of Talakon. So beautiful and fascinating, and just leads itself to further exploration, which I'm so glad, spoiler alert, that he didn't die in the end, because I was really actually like worried towards the end. I was like, oh, you're not going to kill him, are you? Like, you've just introduced us to such a fascinating character who is neither really a villain or a hero. You can't just like suddenly take that away from us. But luckily they didn't kill him, so we're going to see him again. But just that whole dynamic and just the idea of like both stories, Black Panther's narrative films have been very much about like dealing with the outside world, isolationism and colonialism. But essentially I think it's really interesting how these films are dealing with the consequences of colonialism and exploring that very beautifully and very rawly in a film with such mass audience. So it's really putting awareness to Indigenous cultures and the sort of turmoil that they went through at the hands of European colonisers, which I think is really important. And yeah, the set pieces in this, fucking sensational. I love Shuri. I think she's such a cool character, and I'm so glad that she got to shine in this film and sort of take over the mantle of the Black Panther. But I do kind of feel like this film did belong to the Talconian characters. Like, Namor, so cool, so interesting, and he's cute as well. But that's besides the point. But it was so, I don't know, like, I was just kind of like, oh wow, like the way there was a siren song that would lure people into the sea, and sort of how they would fight, and the fact that they spoke Yucatan/Mayan language. I thought that was great. And like the actor Tenoch Huerta, I think that's how you pronounce his name, Tenoch, very much a star in his own right in Mexico, but now he's like on the world stage, and that's so cool that these films can show these beautiful cultures in a mass media product. Like, I think it's really beautiful how Black Panther is a cultural phenomenon. Like, these films are so much more than just movies and superhero films, and I love that. So I really enjoyed it. Like, there's a lot of people on the internet saying it's all really muddled, blah, 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 it's too long. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was brilliant. And that's it. And that's all I've got to say. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again soon. Bye bye.
And bring the bottle tonight, red wine to rerun all our memories right. It's just a matter of time before your cheeks turn into peaches and the stars realign. Another glass of wine to find the diamonds in your eyes, darling. Another glass of wine, you know it's time.